Welcome back to the deep dive. So we often talk about these massive global systems, these huge infrastructures that shape how we live.
Hmm.
But today, I want to focus on one of the most familiar and yet, I think, profoundly strange environments that we've ever invented, the International Airport,
Oh, absolutely. The strangeness is it's almost the first thing you notice.
right? Why do these massive, gleaming, climate-controlled places, these hubs of global movement that are supposedly about ultimate efficiency, so often feel, well, disorienting,
Yeah.
alienating, sometimes even, hostile?
It's a space that operates on so many levels at once. You have this deep personal anxiety at the micro level, and then this dizzying macro level of just sheer logistical complexity.
A place we just pass through.
Exactly. It's a blur. But it leaves this very specific psychological imprint on you, mostly because it strips away all of your normal context.
And we are going to dissect that exact imprint. I mean, sociologically, the airport is the perfect laboratory, isn't it? It's a perfect place to examine the constraints of modern life.
It is. These are places engineered specifically for volume processing, for instantaneous transition.
And if we want to get right into the core idea, the analytical lens for today, we have to start by calling the airport what it is. A classic, almost pristine example of what the sociologist Marc Augé called a non-place.
The non-place, yes. Auger came up with this idea back in the early 90s, and it's more relevant now than ever. He used it to describe these spaces of transition,
Yeah.
anonymity, places where we only have functional or, contractual relationships with people.
So not real social relationships.
No, not at all. Think about it. Motorways, self-checkout aisles at the supermarket, hotel rooms, and the most perfect example, the absolute peak of the non-place, is the sterile, endless corridor of a major airport.
It's the architecture of detachment. When you're in a non-place, you aren't there for deep cultural interaction.
You're there for functional interaction.
Yeah.
You're there to do a thing. And in these spaces, you get reduced. You're not a citizen with a history. You're not a local with an identity. You're a consumer. You're not a person with, feelings and complexities. You are a passenger, an alphanumeric string on a ticket. You're just a unit that has to be processed.
So the whole point of the non-place is that you have to sacrifice your identity for the system's efficiency.
That's the deal you make.
And the mission for this deep dive is to really understand the painful mechanics of that disorientation. And we're going to do it by looking at a specific scenario, a piece of source material from a listener that just perfectly captures a moment of intense travel stress.
Because it's when the system cracks, right? When that smooth veneer of efficiency just shatters for a moment, that's when you see the underlying structure of control.
So tell us about the force.
Okay, so we have this narrative from a traveler, Maya. She's at a huge international airport making a connection to New York. And she's in that state, that comfortable, quiet moment between flights where everything feels okay.
You've made it through security, you've found your gate, you can relax for a bit.
Precisely. And then, the source says, the system suddenly turns aggressively hostile. She hears an announcement, but it's just garbled, too fast, swallowed by the sheer size of the building. Unintelligible.
The classic airport announcement experience.
Right. So she looks at the departure screen, and her gate has changed. It's gone from A1 to C50.
Oh, no. That's a shift that carries a very specific kind of logistical cruelty.
It's absolutely true. And here's the twist. She has only 15 minutes to cross what could literally be miles of terminal.
Wow.
And that single moment, that instant snap from, calmly sipping a coffee to just sheer primal panic, that is the kernel of the airport experience we really need to get into today.
We're going to use this one crisis, Maya's crisis, to unpack the entire sociology of modern transit, the architecture, the psychology, the language, and we're going to reveal that central tension. Is the airport a place of ultimate freedom, or is it a place of ultimate control? Okay, let's start with the physical space itself, the geography of anxiety. Maya's crisis is all about scale and speed.
Right.
You've got the logistical breakdown, gate A1 to C50. In 15 minutes. In any big international hub, that often requires a shuttle or an underground train or just sprinting for what feels like miles.
It's the instant velocity of the crisis. The non-place, by its very design, has to maximize its scale to handle the volume of people. So you get these huge monolithic glass walls, these endlessly polished floors, the cavernous ceilings.
It's designed to make you feel small.
It achieves two things at once, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It maximizes the flow, sure, but it also immediately highlights how vulnerable you, the individual traveler, are against the massive physical scale of the building.
Yeah, you are an ant. You're just crawling across this immense, indifferent landscape, and the acoustics are always echoey, which makes any one-on-one human conversation feel less important than that big, booming, authoritative voice from the PA system.
Exactly. That distance, A1 to C50, it's not just a physical distance. It's a measure of systemic failure. The system has decided that you are now too small, too slow, and you are completely at its mercy. Maya is suddenly sprinting, exposed, vulnerable against this cold, hard, indifferent geometry. The architecture of the non-place does not embrace you.
It processes you.
It processes you.
And the clock, in that scenario, the clock becomes the enemy. 15 minutes isn't time. It's a countdown to failure. It's a kind of temporal aggression from the system.
And it forces you to suspend all comfortable thought. It's just pure reactive motion.
Which brings us right to this idea of homogenization, doesn't it? Because all airports are basically the same. They're the ultimate standardized environment.
They really are.
Yeah.
They are engineered globally to do one thing: process volume efficiently. You could land in Incheon or Dubai or Amsterdam, and the process is fundamentally identical. The security lines, the pictograms they use for signage, the seating, the layout of the shops.
It's a global blueprint for moving people. And that standardization is key to stripping away your identity, right? Your regional identity, your cultural identity.
Yeah.
It all gets flattened.
It's why they all feel the same, even though they're in radically different cultures. The non-place actively aggressively rejects local nuance.
And so Maya isn't treated as a unique person with her own needs or her own emotional state.
No, she's a functional unit. She's a connection. She has to fit the schedule. Her passport, her ticket, they reduce her entire being down to an alphanumeric string, a destination code JFK, and an expected trajectory. Homogenization makes sure the machine never has to see her as anything more than that.
So her crisis, the fact that her personal schedule just broke, that exposes the failure point of this whole standardized system. When it's working, she's just gliding along the conveyor belt.
Reading her book, sipping her coffee.
But when it fails, when the gate changes from A1 to C50, she is instantly stranded inside a process that has no idea how to handle individual problems gracefully.
The system has zero capacity for empathy. It only has capacity for volume throughput. The architecture itself tells you that efficiency is the only thing that matters. So any deviation, like Maya's last-minute dash across the terminal, it forces her into an emergency state where she has to fight the system's own design.
And the only way to win, to get back some control, is to immediately adopt the system's language.
And its tempo. You have to speed up.
Which leads us to this whole idea of communication breakdown and the kind of jargon you need to survive.
Right. In her panic, Maya has to instantly access this very specific, very functional almost, concussive set of linguistic tools. She can't waste time with, "Excuse me, and I'm so sorry to bother you."
No pleasantries, no explaining her emotional state.
The source material is so good on this because it shows the psychological shift you have to make. The vocabulary itself: connection, gate, announcement, terminal, boarding, departure. These aren't conversational words. They're technical descriptors. They're basically computer commands.
They're the keywords you need to unlock the assistance mechanism.
Exactly. You have to jettison all conversational nuance. You have to separate the noise of your personal distress from the required signal of function.
So let's break that down. What's the noise?
The noise would be, "Oh my goodness, I've had such a terrible morning. My flight was delayed. I'm completely lost. I'm starting to panic and my feet hurt and I really, really need to get to New York."
Which is all true, but it's data the system can't process. It's subjective inefficiency.
Exactly. It's noise.
And the required signal.
The signal is the verbal equivalent of smashing the emergency button. It's gate, C50, 15 minutes, missing connection, help.
It's those concise phrases from the source. I missed my flight. Where is the shuttle? My gate has changed.
I'm in a hurry. These are functional codes. They communicate status and urgency to the system's agents, the airport staff, who are themselves trained functional units.
What's so fascinating is that this requirement for these stripped-down phrases, it highlights that it's a linguistic homogenization, too. You have to speak the language of the machine, or you will be left behind.
If you can't speak the language of transit, you literally cannot proceed. If you try to bring subjectivity into it, the agent, whose job is to maintain the flow, will just filter you out. They need to hear the code gate, time, problem, so they can give you the prescribed standardized solution.
Which is usually something like take the Blue Line to C terminal on the lower level.
Right. Anything else is just noise, and the non-place can't tolerate noise because noise threatens efficiency.
It is the ultimate transactional conversation, isn't it? And it's happening under extreme duress. That must be psychologically jarring in itself.
Oh, it's a rapid cognitive contraction. Maya's world just shrinks down to a single goal. Get to C50. All of her other social and intellectual skills are temporarily suspended. It's just high-speed survival mode problem solving.
All happening in this bizarrely clean space of polished marble and glass.
She has, for a moment, shed her social self. She's become a purely functional mechanism designed for one purpose, to close the gap between A1 and C50.
Okay, let's unpack this even more. If the non-place is the setting, the static architecture, then what is the specific psychological state that it forces on you?
Right.
This is where we go from the geometry of the building to the psychology of the person inside it.
And we transition directly into the concept of liminality. It comes from the Latin word limen, which means a threshold.
It's a threshold, okay.
And liminality is the perfect way to describe that state of being betwixt and between. The anthropologist Victor Turner used it to describe rites of passage. He said the person in the ritual is suspended. They're not who they were, but they're not yet who they will become.
And the airport traveler is in a constant state of ritual passage.
Precisely. Think about Maya. She's no longer defined by her home identity. Her job, her family, her neighborhood. All that context dissolved the second she went through security.
But she hasn't gone to New York yet, so she doesn't have that identity either. Visitor, tourist, business traveler.
She is suspended. She's in a kind of social and psychological purgatory. And that liminal state is so stressful because we, as humans, we crave stable context. When you take away those stable markers of identity, you feel disoriented, you feel vulnerable.
In that moment of suspension, her normal identity just dissolves. The sophisticated traveler, the person who packed her bag perfectly, the person who manages a company.
That person is gone. She's now only a body hurtling towards gate C50. She's been stripped down to her most vulnerable functional identity, the frantic passenger. She is totally dependent on the airport's resources, on strangers' directions, on that merciless clock.
That loss of agency, that reduction to a dependent unit. That's the core of liminality's disorientation. You're nobody for a while, just floating between worlds, and you have to follow these rigid, impersonal rules. And what about the actual physical act? That 15-minute dash. It's not just running, it's a mental suspension of critical thought.
The psychological cost is the total surrender of agency. When you're moving that fast, under that much pressure, you are forced to rely on instinct and those very basic social scripts we just talked about.
Right, the functional phrases.
Maya doesn't have time to rationally analyze her options, to check 3 different screens to find a clever solution. She has to execute the most basic, standardized movements. Run, find staff, deploy the urgent phrases.
So the system, by creating that time pressure, has effectively taken control of her cognitive state. It's manufactured panic.
And that engineered panic makes the traveler perfectly compliant, perfectly reactive. You stop being a critical observer, and you just become a frantic but necessary part of the process. Your survival instinct overrides any ability to question the injustice or the pure absurdity of the situation.
Okay, let's pivot for a second. Because this liminal space, it's not all panic and running. There's this other bizarre part of it, the mandated distraction. If this system is all about control and function, why does it stick this glittering, hyper-capitalist playground right in the middle of it all? I'm talking about the duty-free area.
Ah, the duty-free. It's the perfect case study in social performance within liminality. The second you're processed through security, you are dumped into a vast retail space. It's completely intentional.
Because you're trapped.
You're trapped. You are suspended. You can't go back home, can't arrive at your destination yet, so the system has to give you something to do.
And the most homogenized, globally understood human activity is shopping. It's consumption, exactly. The duty-free offers you this temporary break from being a functional unit. When Maya, before her crisis, maybe pauses to look at a display of expensive watches or perfume, she's momentarily performing the role of a global consumer. She's exercising a kind of economic freedom.
It's a performance of privilege, isn't it? I choose this specific brand of giant Toblerone. That small choice feels like an assertion of self against the tide of homogenization.
And that privilege is the key. The appeal isn't just about saving a bit on tax, it's a status signifier. The very act of shopping there says, I am successful enough to be moving internationally, and I am wealthy enough to spend discretionary income in this weird, stateless zone.
It's a consumption script designed to make the traveler feel special before the gate agent reminds them they're just seat 23A.
Precisely.
But I have to challenge that idea of freedom. Even in the duty-free, surely that performance is also dictated by the architecture. You can only shop there because you've passed through the single greatest symbol of state control, the security checkpoint.
Absolutely correct. You are physically funneled through the shops to get to the gates.
You are. The commercial space isn't an alternative to the control space. It is seamlessly integrated into the control space. The glittering displays are there because the control infrastructure has created a captive, bored, and relatively wealthy audience. It's managed consumption in a heavily managed environment.
So that luxury perfume isn't a choice, it's more of a psychological pacifier. You have surrendered your autonomy. Here is a shiny object to make you feel better.
That's a very good way to put it. Which brings us back to Maya's panic. Because that is also a social performance, but one driven by desperation, not privilege.
The performance of distress.
Yes, it's a social script we learned for survival. The traveler has to visibly conform to the role of desperate passenger to get help. If Maya had walked up calmly and said, "Excuse me, I've noticed a gate change, and I'm a bit concerned about the timing," what would happen?
She'd get a cool bureaucratic response. She'd be at the back of the queue.
Why?
Because calmness suggests she has it under control. It suggests she doesn't actually need intervention.
Exactly. But if she appears frantic, visibly stressed, her bags are a mess, and she immediately shouts the key phrase, "I'm in a hurry, gate C50." That urgency compels the system agent to prioritize her. She's communicating, non-verbally and verbally, that her deviation from the system is severe and needs immediate correction.
It's pure theater. You have to perform your level of crisis so the system can calculate the necessary response.
The liminal traveler in that moment trades her personal dignity, the desire to appear composed, for systemic velocity.
She chooses survival over composure.
And the system rewards that performance of vulnerability with temporary, prioritized access to its resources. The psychological stress is the price of admission.
Okay, this is where it gets really, really interesting. This is where we hit the central ideological tension of the airport. On one hand, airports are supposed to be symbols of ultimate freedom, the ability to leap across continents, global commerce, radical mobility. But every single thing about Maya's story suggests an environment of massive, systemic, and unforgiving control.
It is the paradox that defines the modern transit hub. It's an ideological contradiction built out of concrete, steel, and glass. You have the promise of liberation and the immediate experience of subjugation happening in the same place at the same time.
Let's lay out the argument for total control first. The architecture of power.
The gate change. A1 to C50 in 15 minutes. That is the primary piece of evidence. The system dictates Maya's path, her speed, her time, and it completely overrides her personal plans, her comfort, her physical limits. The system decides if her journey is possible, not her.
And the unintelligible announcement. That's an element of control too, isn't it? It's not a conversation, it's a command. You hear it, you see the screen, you move. Instantly, there is no debate, no appeal.
The structural imposition is total. Just think about the path from check-in to the gate. Everything is funneled. You can't skip security. You can't deviate from the roped-off pathways. Even the waiting areas are designed to discourage you from getting too comfortable. The traveler is completely subordinate to the clock in the building.
It's like a modern panopticon. But the surveillance isn't just visual, it's temporal. Every move is logged and timed against a schedule. Your body's own rhythms, when you eat, when you rest, they're dictated by the system's needs, not your own.
That temporal control is probably the most aggressive form of control. If the system says you must be at gate C50 at 7:00 a.m. and you arrive at 7:01 a.m., the system, in the form of a closed door and an indifferent gate agent, will aggressively reject you. That ruthless adherence to the schedule is the ultimate expression of total, unforgiving control.
But wait, I have to push back on that, because if we frame the airport purely as a prison, we miss the entire point of why it exists.
I think Maya sprinting with her luggage from A1 to C50 feels a lot more like she's in a prison than a place of freedom. The subjective cost of that control is intense anxiety.
The cost is real, I'm not denying that, but let's look at the argument for freedom. It's rooted in the purpose. Yes, the process is controlled, but the purpose is radical freedom. Maya wants to get to New York. The very fact that this impossibly complex machine can get her across an ocean in a few hours, that is an incredible expression of human mastery over geography.
So your argument is that the absolute restriction of freedom inside the terminal is the necessary price you pay for the ultimate freedom beyond the terminal.
Exactly. The control isn't the point. It's the required infrastructure. It's a necessary friction. If an airport was truly free, if people could wander anywhere, if security was optional, if schedules were just suggestions, the entire system would collapse into chaos.
No planes would ever take off.
The freedom of global movement, the ability to jump to another continent, would vanish.
That is a very powerful counter-analysis. It reframes the control as a purchased necessity, not an arbitrary imposition. Still, we have to keep coming back to Maya's experience. Her panic is the feeling of that agency being sacrificed. The price of the ticket buys two things: the freedom of mobility and the immediate, temporary annihilation of your personal autonomy.
And crucially, the system is designed to take the responsibility for time management away from you. You stop managing your life and you start managing your compliance with the schedule.
And that loss of responsibility can be seductive, can't it? Maybe that's why people find the non-place strange, but sometimes also appealingly simple. It's a vacation from complex decision-making. All you have to do is follow the rules. Wait here, proceed there, show documents now.
So that brings us to the synthesis. The airport isn't one or the other. It's a profound paradox.
Yes.
It is a space designed to enable the ultimate expression of modern freedom, global travel, but it can only do that by enforcing the ultimate homogenized control over everyone inside its walls.
And Maya's experience is the perfect encapsulation of that double bind. Her desire for freedom getting to New York forces her into a state of total desperate compliance, the dash from A1 to C50. The panic is the feeling of that control being aggressively exerted, of her autonomy being crushed, all in the service of a higher freedom.
The non-place demands you give up who you are so the system can move you where you want to be. It strips away our normal social context, and in doing so, it reveals just how reliant we are on routine, on the simple right to control our own time and movement.
And in the end, the airport acts as a kind of high-stakes sociological filter. It tests your ability to navigate bureaucracy, time, and space under extreme pressure. If you fail, if you can't communicate the right phrases, if you can't cover the distance from A1 to C50, the system rejects you, and your intended freedom, your destination, is denied.
So what does this all mean for us, for all of us travelers? We've looked at Maya's crisis through this deep sociological lens. Let's just quickly recap the tools we used.
Well, we started with the concept of the non-place, which defines the architecture. It's functional, anonymous, transitional. Those vast echoing halls are designed to maximize processing, not personal engagement.
And then we had liminality, which defines the state of mind. You're suspended, your identity's gone, you're dependent, you're psychologically betwixt and between, and that makes you vulnerable.
And finally, homogenization defines the process itself. It's standardized, it's efficient, and has no capacity for a personalized response. You're reduced to a data point, and you have to speak the functional language of the system just to survive.
And those three things combine to create that specific disorientation, that strangeness that we all feel in an airport, even when everything is going right.
It's the moment when our normal social identity, the one defined by our job, our home, our relationships, is forcibly stripped away and replaced by a temporary, functional one.
It's where global mobility meets human fragility.
And the interesting thing is, this knowledge, it applies far beyond the airport terminal. The airport is really just a microcosm for all sorts of highly controlled, anonymous, modern environments. Think about logistics warehouses, huge government service centers, even standardized university campuses.
They're all places where your functional identity temporarily overtakes your personal one, demanding that you comply for the sake of efficiency. The strangeness of the airport is really a reflection of our own momentary loss of self in the face of this hyper-modern systemic machine.
A psychological price we pay, maybe willingly, for the incredible gift of instantaneous global connection. A perfect thought to end on.
So if the airport is where you shed your identity to gain mobility, we'll leave you with this final provocative question. Think about it the next time you're waiting between worlds, maybe staring into the glittering chaos of the duty-free, wondering which version of yourself the system prefers, host speaker and expert speaker. Do you feel more like yourself or less like yourself when you are at the airport?